Welcome to the Future Media Concepts AVID Media Composer webinar. So let's jump into it. You will notice that in my upper left-hand corner, I already have a number of bins opened, and this new interface that was introduced in 2019 June, which dates the version 2019.6, identifies the bins a little bit differently visually. So they look like drawers from a cabinet. So if you close one, it would look like this. So when I close all of them, they look like just cabinet drawers. To open it up, double click, opens up. And I have a project that is already put together. And in the project, I have a sequence timeline that is going to be used for demonstration purposes. Today, I'll deal mostly with time issues. So anything that is of time, slowing it up, speeding it up, freezing it, and playing backwards will be addressed. With that note, let's get rid of the upper layer by clicking on the timeline and hitting delete. The question comes up, do you want to delete that? Select the track, there we go. This is a pre-cut sequence that has a number of clips added into the track, and you will notice that some of these clips are very interesting in terms of activity of the talent. Therefore, there are three guys in this scenario jumping on a ledge. There is a guy spinning in the air, and it's slow motion. If we want to do some timing of it, here are possible scenarios. So let's start with introducing to you the tool, in this case, the effect that will be used. Upper left-hand corner, switching from the bins view to the effect palette. In the effect palette, you can type in a specific one that you're looking for. We're looking for the time warp. Even if you just type in time, it gives you options where the time word appears. In this case, if we look for a time warp, it will be in the time warp family. If you clear out the search on the bottom left-hand all the way, time warp identifies that. Time warp has a number of presets. They all seem to be real time. That suggests that you don't need to render anything. So you can speed up from 0 to 100, you can slow down from 100, you can freeze a frame, reverse motion, speed boost, speed bump, time warp, and trim to fill. I will deal with the time warp because that's the flagship, and it's going to have all the elements of all these other individual ones that are listed here. So step one, put a time warp effect by either physically dragging it from the effects palette onto the clip, one option. To take it off, you have two choices. In the past, you always use the effect remover. If the effect remover is not active, it's possibly because the track is not turned on. So in AVID, we know that the track selection is very significant. Whatever track is selected, that is the track that is going to be affected. Therefore, if I take it off, it comes off. The second way of taking off a effect, in this case, it is the time warp, is selecting a segment, which in our case would be Shift A, which is a red segment, which is a lift over red segment. Selecting the segment identifies that we have, let's visualize it as food, we have a pancake that has some berries on it. So these berries are not baked in. To take those berries off, what we did earlier was taking off, remove, or in this case, if I park on it and I hit delete, I presume that I'm going to delete whatever was on layer. If I delete it one more time, you will notice that it is taking out the clip itself. So the computer realizes and understands that the effect icon that we are looking at is just a effect. It is not baked into the shot. It's not rendered into the shot. To make the viewing of the timeline a little bit more interesting, as in the past, you went into the fast menu and the track color now shows you more color options than you had before. If you hold down Option while you go into the fast menu, then additional colors come up. And this is where you can mix your own color, pick something existing. You can obviously move around and select flavors. You can also adjust densities or brightnesses of colors. Or if you are very, very specific and you want to mix colors by adjusting the amount of red, green, and blue, for example, 235 red and 235 green should, by definition, gives you yellow, presuming you don't have any blue. So now that is a pure broadcast safe yellow. We know that if we had the same amount of the red, green, and blue in electronics and digital, we have the white. If you click on the white that is selected and given you as a choice, you would be able to see that the numbers are in all three cases 255, signifying that's the maximum. That would be known as a super white. If you go on the upper left-hand corner to the black, that would be your super black 0. The broadcast, just to quickly side note remind you, would be 16 to 235 for save broadcast, if you're a broadcaster. Anyways, to change a color, let's pick something that we kind of are happy with. When you're okay with it, now you have the track. So now let's manipulate some of the elements that TimeWarp gives us. Generally, when you are looking at changing from edit to a effects, the TimeWarp effect is not part of the family that is the standard effects family. So the TimeWarp requires that on the timeline toolbar you activate your effects mode, and the effects mode gives you the elements that you're going to work with. So this is a floating effect mode. In order to manipulate things, here are possible choices. The two graphs that are visually important for us to deal with is, first of all, the speed graph, and then we have the position graph. The speed graph and the position graph are connected, so if you move one of those elements, you will notice that the speed and the position, as well as the timeline and as well as the composer window moves. So that is all connected. What does the speed graph represent? It represents the speed that you are currently playing that video. In this case, it suggests I am going at 100% speed. So whatever I am looking at is 100%. The position shows that from the beginning all the way to the upper right-hand corner is going to be going straight. So there is no change in speed. If I want to change the speed, somewhere in the middle, adding a keyframe and changing that speed to faster or slower changes the curvature in the position. For practicality, will turn the position graph off and just deal with the speed graph. And the speed graph is going to give us a number of choices that we can manipulate and work with in real time. So we understand how to add a keyframe. We also understand holding Option or Alt moves the keyframe left or right. And we also understand that if we move the keyframe above or below the starting point, the speed changes. Now, you will notice that the curvature, which is the diagram showing how the speed changes, is very unique. This is an option where you can change it to from spline, which is the default, to linear. Linear gives you a straight increase in speed as well as straight decrease in speed. If you activate your shelf, the shelf is the most practical tool in this scenario, where the playback will play at 100% speed up to the next keyframe where an instant switch occurs, which means that if I'm playing 100%, at one point instantly it will go down to half speed. To demonstrate this more dramatically, it would be a good idea to bring it down to 0. You can manually bring it down, and it snaps to certain junction points, or you can type in a number when you're parked on the keyframe. So if I want to go from whatever the number is, I'll just highlight the number and type in 0. It brings it down to 0. So it should freeze it instantly. When I play it back, I'm going to... That's it. So it freezes it. And you can actually check how it does it instantly in real time. This tool is adjustable two different ways. I'm talking about how the interpolation is controlled. One, you can right-click and select from the choices the spline, the linear, and the Bezier. And the Bezier can be adjusted. And in my case, I'm going to stick to the shelf. Or you can use your hamburger, which is a fast menu. So in the hamburger, if you click on it, it should show you the choices. The difference between clicking the hamburger is left click, and if you're going to change the interpolation in the graph, you would have to right click on the keyframe. So with that being said, let's freeze the guys, and then let's go backwards a little bit. So if we park on the shot, move slightly the playhead a little bit, add a keyframe, and drag it backwards. What kind of speed? Well, let's make it 100%. So now he's going to be going back, but it's not 100, it's going to be minus 100. So now goes by minus 100, and then we're going to add another keyframe, and we're going to bring it back to 0. So they will be. And we can do some silly stuff because timing for us is going to be helping to play the footage faster at the beginning. So I'm going to play it faster, about 200%, to be very precise. We're going to freeze it earlier, moving Option to the left. Have it last a little bit short, holding Option. And then we're going to go backwards and play it and freeze it. Let's try to freeze them when they are already up. Therefore, I'm going to speed it up a little bit more. So when we look at it, there we go, they're up on the ledge. So we're going to freeze them in the air, and they're going to come back. And I need them to come back a little bit. There we go. And then go back again. And that would be presuming that we're going to speed it up. We have enough footage. Speed it up. So the algorithmic display is start fast, freeze it, go backwards, 100%, go back again to freezing it, hold it frozen, and then go back to speeds. If you want to match the speeds of the first and the last keyframe, would be just simply typing in and the numbers are accurate. Playing it out real time. And you notice how simple that is. The next shot is going to be very, very unique. This shot, the guy is spinning, and for some reason, we don't see him landing. We don't see him landing on the ground. So we would like to speed it up that he lands in the ground, but we would like to do some silly stuff. Stop him in the air, go backwards, and then land on it. The question I'm asking myself, do I have enough footage? And this is what you as an editor should also think about. If you do not have something recorded, the playback, speed up or slow down is not going to make any difference. So I will park on the first frame of that shot, which would be holding down Command, snap to the edit point, or Control, snap to the edit point. And if you hit on the video track at the beginning of the timeline, a right-click match frame brings it up, and it brings me back a floating source monitor. Why? Because I'm in effects mode. So if that is to be changed, you know how to do that by now. Upper right-hand corner of the interface, click on it, and now you have the two monitors set up. Rearranging your interface right now, because it's a single page interface, you have additional choices that you can create. So you have the preset edit, color, effects, and audio. If you want to make changes, like for example, in this scenario, I will make changes. I will stretch out the source and the record window, which is part of the composer window. And in order for you to save it, in the Windows drop-down, in the workspaces, you can activate a new workspace, and we'll call it Webinar Workspace. So when that is done, I need to find out how much do I have before or after this particular selection in the timeline. You also remember that in order for you to find out what is the duration of the clips, a couple of choices. One of the choices would be making sure that only video one is selected, hitting T. T gives you a selection of the marking by finding the electronic impulse of the start, as well as the electronic impulse of the ending. And in the center duration between the source and the record, it shows you the amount of seconds and frames. In this case, it is 3 seconds and 28 frames. G clears it out. And go to the beginning of the clip, holding down Command on a Mac. So if you right-click on the V1 at the beginning of the timeline, the match frame should tell you that the frame that we are using in the record monitor is identified with a marking. So I have enough footage before. Plus I have him spin, I have him land, and he walks away and he turns around. So there's a lot of footage. How long is that footage? On the left side, the R02_06. In this scenario, if I click on the drop down, the duration should be about 12 seconds and 18 frames. So I have enough to play with to slow things down, speed things up, play backwards. On that note, let's clear the source monitor, please. Clear the monitor as well as clear the menu, so I have nothing in the source. Go back to the webinar preset, which in this case is the one that we worked on. And as we did earlier, we go into the upper left-hand corner, find the effects palette through the TimeWarp. The scenario right now is going to be the following. I will stop the jumper in the air. I will have him go backwards, and then I'll have him speed up and he's going to land on the concrete. So, step one, instead of using the effects, we told effects does not work with these time warp effects. Go into your top of the toolbar of the timeline, activate effects mode. The effects mode comes up and it shows you the running man. Well, it doesn't show the running man. The running man shows up when you don't have the speed graph open. When the speed graph is open, the running man is gone. So now you see that you have 100%. I will speed up that 100% to 300 from the beginning, 300. There we go. The guy comes in, and this is going back to what the original footage was, because as I said, when we did the match frame, when you look at the match frame, the footage that is given to us is already slow motioned. So we had to speed it up, going back to normal speed. So it was recorded slow motion. Let's clear the menu, clear the monitor, and let's find out how can we have him frozen, how can we play him backwards. Go again back to your friend, the effects mode. In effects mode, it tells me that I'm starting with 300. So I'll stop him in the air somewhere here. Add a keyframe, and because I want to, from the get-go, use the shelf interpolation, either go into the hamburger and change it to shelf. So if I bring it down to 0, I can type in 0, freezes it. There we go. And hold it frozen for a couple of frames. Well, you can actually count how many frames you can move your frame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Add a keyframe. I'm going to go backwards, play it backwards, 300. So I'm going to type in minus 300. And goes back minus 300. And just before he reaches the edge, find out where he just tips it. There we go. Park on it. Add a keyframe. And from this point on, we're going to go 300% again. Not to frozen, but again to normal 300, which is 300, there we go. So now you notice that the jumps and the changes in keyframes are very clearly visible. Now, if you don't see all of them, meaning all of the keyframes, you should have an ability to shrink down your vertical playout area. I have done speed ups where it's above 2100, but visually you can only see up to 2100. So in this scenario, I will make sure that I have enough understanding that I'm starting off with what? With the 300, then I freeze it, go backwards, and jump back to 300. Let's play it out real time. Guys, this is amazing. Nobody has it. And the question obviously is, how are you playing it back? The flavors that are available in the type are duplicated, both fields interpolated, or VTR style. My suspicion is that because this was recorded slow motion, it has the whole variety of extra frames to work with. But generally, your eyes will tell you that the duplicated field is a lower quality when you slow things down. Both fields is acceptable when there's no interframe movement, and interpolated is probably the most reliable as a starting point. So if you want to have the interpolated field chosen, now again, because the green dot is in the timeline, it identifies it, plays it real time, so I don't have to worry about render. On the bottom of my timeline, you notice that there is a, from the left, I will count it for you, it is your fourth button. So the first button would be the fast menu, second, third, fourth button is the video quality. If you right click on it, the full quality as a 10-bit floating and draft quality choices are available. Generally, when you play things back, people show it in a draft quality, but because this is a 1287-20, I should be able to play it back full quality. And if I play it back full screen, it should be Command-Shift-F, Control, Shift-F on the Windows. Let's play it back. Let's go to the last demonstration portion. This portion that I am going to be working with is the guy jumping, and I would like to use the freeze frame, and the freeze frame has two different flavors. The flavor that I am working with is going to be very simple. I'll drag a effect palette time warp preset called freeze frame. So if you notice when I drag the freeze frame, it freezes the frame, but it freezes a specific frame of the shot, namely the first frame. Let me undo it, Command Z, Control Z, or if you just park on it and take the effect off by using your friend remove effect. So the first frame looks like the guys are jumping, but the one I want to freeze is this guy at the end, almost where he jumps over the concrete and he lands on the bench. There we go. That's the frame I want to freeze. So you could cut off everything else, move things and slip it and all the rest of the stuff, but here's the best way of explaining how powerful the time warp is. Let's again drag the time warp effect onto the clip, or in this case use the Shift A, selecting it and double clicking on the time warp so it goes onto it. Activating the effect mode now allows you to see elements that earlier we had not paid attention to. Namely, if I park my playhead on a shot where I would like to freeze it, in this case the guy lands on the concrete bench, I have a choice where this little anchor needs to be moved to the keyframe that I'm going to add. Add a keyframe, and I'm going to change the anchor position. So setting the source anchor frame at the selected keyframe identifies that that is the frame that I'm going to play back material from. Therefore, the only thing that remains for me is deleting the original, where things come in, and just drag down the keyframe to 0 or type in 0. So now I achieved with 3 keystrokes freezing the frame where he is on the concrete. Let me take that off. Command Z, couple of ways, undo it. You know that in Media Composer, in the Edit drop-down, when you do the undo, redo, there is a list of things that you have done. And if you go someplace, maybe a couple of steps behind, when you check it again, the line going from left to right identifies how far you went back. That's a cool little feature. Anyways, just wanted to point that out to you. So if I want to freeze something else, take the effect off. Let's see if I can freeze something else. I would like to freeze the guy who is jumping, the guy in a green shirt. He's jumping on a corner there, concrete. There we go. I want to have the freezing. So if I want to have him frozen on that one, that's the frozen frame. Step 1, instead of using the freeze frame, because as I said, let me just repeat the understanding. If I add the freeze frame, it doesn't freeze. It freezes the first frame of the shot. By definition, that's how the system is designed. Therefore, if I want to freeze on the middle of the shot, adding the time warp, step 1. Step 2, go into the effects mode. Make sure that the keyframe is activated. Step 3, change the anchor. So the anchor is now under the frame that you want to freeze. Get rid of the first keyframe and drag down, or just type in 0 into the numeric box, and then the keyframe will be that particular speed, in this case frozen frame. So with that being said, let's just do the last exercise, and the last exercise is going to be, there's a shot where the guy jumps off a ledge and starts running toward the park. So let him. Okay, so what I would like to do is let him stop in the air, go back, and then run forward fast speed. Step 1, grab the time warp effect. Drag it onto the clip. Step 2, activate your effects mode. Make sure that when you come down, you freeze him just before he lands. Make sure that freezing is going to be held for a duration. Make sure you're going to play it backwards. And then you're going to go fast speed. So I kind of pre-mapped ahead of time where things will happen. Therefore, parking on the time where he's going to freeze, on that frame he should be frozen, which is 0. Well, remember we said that it is a good idea to set the interpolation ahead of time. So generally, when you start to do this kind of work, you need to make sure that, hey, interpolation is going to be shelf. Now, type in 0, drops down. holds it. So this is where I need to have him play backwards. First keyframe, freezes it, go backwards. Third keyframe is going backwards, minus 100. Then go back again, freeze him in the air, and then go speed him up at the end, like maybe 250. Let's see if that works. Playing, freeze, goes back, goes down, and starts running. Play it out real time. Got it. So if nothing else, this webinar hopefully opened your eyes and got you into the understanding that the time management, meaning the speed of the footage, can be adjusted in real time. Keep in mind that the manipulation I had done up to this point is the video only. AVID concentrates on doing one thing at a time. So in this case, it was only dealing with video. You have a number of other options, and some people freeze the frame by parking on it, do a match frame. They go into the frame, you can right click on it, and the freeze frame option comes up. At this time, you can decide how long do you want to freeze it, and this is where you can specify durations if it's more than what the presets are, and using the interpolation or both fields or whatever the default is. Point is that you're generating brand new media, and that generally looks like this. So if you freeze the frame for 5 seconds, render it, what drive is going to go on to, renders it, and it shows up in your source now as a frozen frame for 5 seconds. For some people, that's much more practical and much more efficient. Still, I think that the real-time management is much more efficient. And for most of the uses that you have, the TimeWarp is going to give you a very powerful and very realistic ability to move things around. So with that being said, let's finish off the show with the guy who is third shot from the end. Jumping, we're going to freeze him. And at that point, he's going to be running faster. So this is how you do the exercise. Effects palette, TimeWarp, drag it onto the clip, activate the effect mode, freeze the frame where you think that he needs to be frozen, just about so. I need to make sure that the interpolation is going to be set up from the beginning as shelf, so freezing the frame brings it down to 0. Go backwards. Not necessarily. Go forward and then freeze it again. So you're playing it, freezing it, go fast, freezing it again. And now this guy's going to go backwards, so we're going to give him backwards minus 100. And we'll go backwards. Not sure if you noticed it, but there are 2 buttons here. One is go to previous event, go to next event. This is how you move around the keyframes. So if you click on the left, it goes back. Keyframe, so you don't need to manually activate the keyframe. And the same token, go to next event. When this is all done, you notice that the system tells you that this is a real-time effect, green, which means that it is conditional real-time. The reason why they call it conditional real-time, if you have more than what the system can handle, then something has to be rendered. In this scenario, my system is powerful enough to have it play back in real time, so I don't have to worry about it. Plus, I am playing it back in full quality, which in this case is full quality. So let's see how this whole sequence of times gonna be played out. And Command Shift F, full screen, plays it back, and this is what I have. Okay, if you are looking for time management, meaning slow down, speed up, playing backwards and everything in real time, please consider TimeWarp. If you want to have some quick color added to it, we know how to do that. Command Y, which is Control Y on the Windows. Grab a effect from the effect family known as image, add a color effect. So when you add the color adjustment, and nothing really happens, you need to go into effects mode. In effects mode, identifying the track, in this case the second track, holding Option Alt, closing all the parameters, opening only the luminance adjustment, allows you to make adjustment where the brightness and darkness, contrast, brighten it up, darken it up, contrast it. And if you need to make some chrominance adjustments where the saturation is either increased or decreased a little bit, now when you play it back full quality, the entire sequence is now adjusted. And if you want to make it warmer, you know how to do that. Make the saturation either increase or whatever the saturation is, bring it down a little bit and add a little bit more red. Take away a little bit blue, make it more yellowish. So now you change things. Is it to your liking? If it is, enjoy it. It plays back everything in real time. Command Shift F, full screen. Well, that's all for today. You watched the Future Media Concept webinar that was dealing with AVID's TimeWarp and the last couple of seconds with the color adjustment. My name is Tibor Spiegel. Thank you for watching and keep on editing. Good luck to everybody.